What hidden dimensions await beyond the veil of the Taured Man's mysterious passage? Close your eyes for a moment and imagine standing at the crossroads between worlds, where the fabric of reality grows thin and ancient portals whisper secrets that challenge everything you thought you knew about existence itself. In the summer of 1954, as the quantum field pulsed with unseen energies, a doorway opened at Tokyo's Haneda Airport that would forever challenge our understanding of Dimensional Boundaries 14. A well-dressed man stepped through the customs barrier carrying not just luggage, but the very essence of impossibility itself. His passport bore the seal of Taured, a nation that existed nowhere in our current timeline. Yet somewhere in the infinite expanse of parallel realities, this country had thrived for over 1,000 years. Ancient sages understood that reality is not a single thread but an infinite tapestry woven from countless dimensional frequencies. The mystics of old spoke of places where the boundaries between worlds become permeable, where consciousness itself can slip between the cracks of existence. What unfolded that fateful day was not merely a case of mistaken identity. It was a documented glimpse into the quantum nature of our multidimensional universe. The quantum passport phenomenon, when documentation transcends reality. The energetic signature of the Taured Man's passport revealed something extraordinary to those attuned to the deeper mysteries of existence. This was no ordinary forgery crafted by earthly hands. It carried the vibrational imprint of authentic documentation from a parallel timeline where geography itself had been reshaped by different cosmic currents. When customs officials examined this interdimensional credential, they discovered stamps from multiple countries, currencies from various European nations, and travel records that painted the picture of a seasoned businessman who had navigated not just physical borders, but the very boundaries between realities 25. The quantum field reveals that authentic documentation from parallel dimensions carries specific energetic markers that our material instruments cannot detect. Yet, our consciousness can sense when we attune ourselves to higher frequencies. The man's confident presentation of these documents suggests he had no awareness of his dimensional displacement. Ancient texts speak of travelers who slip between worlds so seamlessly that they remain unconscious of their passage until the stark differences in their new reality become undeniable. His genuine confusion and growing irritation when officials questioned his homeland's existence indicate that in his consciousness, Taured was as real and established as any nation we recognize in our current dimensional framework. What's particularly fascinating from a metaphysical perspective is how his documentation maintained its integrity across dimensional boundaries. Quantum consciousness researchers suggest that objects and papers can retain their energetic authenticity when they cross between closely aligned parallel realities. The Taured Man's passport wasn't dissolving or flickering because the vibrational gap between his dimension and ours was relatively narrow, close enough for physical translation, yet distinct enough to create geographical impossibilities. The presence of multiple currencies and international stamps reveals another profound truth. His version of Earth shared enough common elements with ours to allow for similar continental configurations and international travel networks. This suggests that parallel dimensions often mirror our reality with subtle but significant variations, like a cosmic symphony played in a different key. Recognizable yet hauntingly altered. The Andorran Enigma, where sacred geography meets dimensional cartography. Beyond ordinary perception lies a profound mystery embedded in the man's geographical identification of his homeland 14. When presented with a map of our reality, he pointed confidently to the location between France and Spain where our timeline houses the Principality of Andorra. Yet, in his dimensional frequency, this sacred space was occupied by the sovereign nation of Taured, established for over a millennium. Ancient cartographers and mystical geographers have long understood that certain locations on Earth serve as natural dimensional nexus points, places where the planet's energetic grid creates favorable conditions for interdimensional overlap. The Pyrenees mountain range, where both Andorra and the Phantom Taured are situated, has been recognized by esoteric traditions as a powerful convergence zone of telluric energies. The fact that Taured occupied the exact same geographical coordinates as Andorra in our reality points to something far more profound than coincidence. Quantum field dynamics suggests that certain locations maintain consistent energetic signatures across multiple dimensional planes, creating anchor points that remain stable even as the details of civilizations shift and change around them. This particular spot in the Pyrenees appears to be one such cosmic landmark, a place where reality itself is more fluid and permeable. What makes this even more intriguing is the man's complete ignorance of Andorra's existence in our timeline. His genuine bewilderment suggests that in his dimensional origin, either Andorra never developed as a sovereign state, or perhaps it evolved under a completely different name and cultural identity. This reveals how parallel timelines can diverge dramatically in their historical developments while maintaining similar geographical and geological features. The energetic signatures of mountainous regions like the Pyrenees often serve as natural barriers and bridges between dimensions simultaneously. These elevated landscapes channel cosmic energies in unique ways, creating what ancient mystics called thin places, locations where the veil between worlds grows gossamer thin and unexpected crossings become possible. The Vanishing Act. Consciousness transcending physical limitations. The most profound aspect of the Taured Man's journey involves his mysterious disappearance from a secured hotel room, an event that challenges our fundamental understanding of matter, energy, and consciousness itself. 12. Guards stationed outside his door reported no movement. Windows remained sealed, and yet by morning, both the man and all his interdimensional documentation had vanished completely. Quantum consciousness indicates that when beings from parallel dimensions find themselves displaced in incompatible realities, their energetic frequency naturally seeks to return to its original vibrational home. Ancient masters understood that consciousness is not confined by physical matter. It operates according to higher laws that govern the movement between dimensional planes. The timing of his disappearance during the night hours is particularly significant from a metaphysical perspective. Nighttime represents the period when the planet's energetic field naturally shifts into receptive modes, when the barriers between dimensions become most permeable. It's during these hours that interdimensional travelers often find their connection to their home reality strongest, creating opportunities for what mystics call consciousness translation. The fact that all his possessions vanished alongside him suggests that objects infused with his dimensional frequency were naturally drawn back across the barrier with him. This phenomenon indicates that interdimensional displacement affects not just consciousness but extends to anything that carries the energetic signature of the original timeline. His passport documents and personal effects had been saturated with the vibrational essence of Taured's reality, making them incompatible with extended existence in our dimensional framework. What's truly remarkable is that his departure left no trace of forced exit. No broken windows, no damaged doors, no signs of struggle or escape. This points to a process far more elegant than physical movement through space. Instead, it suggests a quantum translation of consciousness and matter that operates beyond our current scientific understanding, but aligns perfectly with ancient mystical teachings about the fluid nature of reality itself. The John Zegrus connection. Unraveling the mundane veil. The earthbound investigation into this interdimensional incident eventually focused on a figure named John Allen Zegrus, whose arrest in 1960 for passport fraud has been used by skeptical minds to explain away the deeper mysteries at Work 139. Yet, the energetic signatures indicate that this connection, while factually documented, may represent only the surface layer of a much more profound phenomenon. Zegrus appeared in our timeline carrying a passport from Taured, a name remarkably similar to Taured, and was eventually revealed to be a skilled forger who had traveled extensively using fabricated documentation. However, the quantum field reveals that sometimes interdimensional incidents create ripple effects that manifest as seemingly unrelated events in our conventional timeline. The possibility exists that Zegrus himself was influenced by residual energetic patterns left behind by the original Taured Man's dimensional crossing. Ancient wisdom teaches that powerful interdimensional events can create what mystics call echo phenomena, secondary manifestations that mirror the original occurrence but at a reduced vibrational frequency. Zegrus's choice to create a passport from an African nation called Taured and his elaborate backstory involving work for various intelligence agencies and government organizations suggest a consciousness that was accessing fragmented memories or impressions from a different dimensional source. His subsequent suicide attempt and mysterious background indicate a man grappling with realities that extended far beyond simple criminal intent. The fact that Zegrus eventually disappeared from historical records after his deportation mirrors the original Taured Man's vanishing, suggesting that both figures may have been temporary manifestations of the same interdimensional phenomenon occurring at different vibrational frequencies. Sometimes parallel realities bleed through in multiple ways, creating both direct dimensional crossings and echo events that confuse those seeking simple explanations. This connection doesn't diminish the mystical significance of the original incident, but rather demonstrates how interdimensional phenomena often create layers of manifestation that can be interpreted through both mundane and mystical lenses depending on one's level of consciousness. Temporal displacement and the fluidity of historical timelines. The Taured incident reveals profound truths about the nonlinear nature of time and the possibility of consciousness existing simultaneously across multiple temporal frequencies. 47. The man's confident assertion that his country had existed for over 1,000 years points to a timeline where historical developments unfolded according to different cosmic influences and collective consciousness patterns. Ancient chronologists understood that time is not a rigid arrow moving in a single direction, but rather a fluid medium that can be navigated by consciousness operating at higher vibrational frequencies. The Taured Man's arrival in 1954 suggests that he may have been displaced not just dimensionally, but temporally, existing in a parallel timeline where historical events had created different geopolitical realities. The quantum field indicates that certain cosmic alignments and energetic configurations can create temporary bridges between not just parallel spaces but parallel times. The mid-1950s represented a period of intense global transformation and shifting consciousness, creating energetic conditions that were particularly favorable for interdimensional and temporal anomalies. His possession of multiple international currencies and travel stamps suggests that in his original timeline, global commerce and international relations had developed along remarkably similar patterns to our own reality, yet with crucial differences in national identities and territorial boundaries. This reveals how parallel timelines often share common underlying structures while manifesting infinite variations in their surface details. The temporal aspect of his displacement also explains his genuine confusion and growing distress when confronted with the impossibility of his situation. From his perspective, he was simply continuing a routine business trip in a familiar world, unaware that he had slipped through a crack in the cosmic matrix into a timeline where his homeland had never achieved recognition or perhaps had developed under entirely different historical circumstances. The psychology of interdimensional displacement. Beyond ordinary perception lies the profound psychological impact of finding oneself in a reality that closely resembles home yet contains fundamental impossibilities. 25. The Taured Man's emotional journey from confidence to confusion to distress illuminates the consciousness challenges faced by interdimensional travelers who become aware of their displacement. Ancient psychologists understood that human consciousness is deeply anchored to familiar environmental and social patterns. When these foundational elements suddenly become unavailable or unrecognizable, the psyche experiences what mystics call reality vertigo, a disorientation that occurs when consciousness cannot reconcile its internal map with external circumstances. The man's initial irritation when officials questioned his documentation reveals a consciousness still operating under the assumption that he existed within his familiar dimensional framework. His growing bewilderment as hotels, companies and banks failed to recognize his credentials demonstrates the psychological stress that occurs when an individual realizes that their entire reality foundation has shifted. From a metaphysical perspective, his emotional responses indicate a consciousness that was still energetically anchored to his original timeline even while physically manifesting in ours. This created an internal conflict between his deep knowing of towards existence and the overwhelming evidence that he had somehow crossed into a reality where his homeland had no presence. The quantum consciousness reveals that such displacement experiences often trigger what ancient sages called dimensional awakening, a sudden expansion of awareness that allows individuals to perceive the malleable nature of reality itself. However, this awakening can be profoundly disorienting for consciousness not prepared for such revelations about the true nature of existence. His ultimate disappearance may have been facilitated not just by energetic factors, but by his consciousness finally accepting the impossible nature of his situation and actively seeking to return to a reality that aligned with his internal knowing. Sometimes the mind itself becomes the bridge that allows consciousness to navigate between dimensional frequencies, the energetic mechanics of dimensional crossing. The Taured Man's journey illuminates the subtle energetic mechanisms that govern movement between parallel realities, revealing technologies of consciousness that ancient masters understood but modern science has yet to acknowledge. 47. His crossing appears to have been unconscious and spontaneous, suggesting that dimensional displacement can occur through natural fluctuations in the cosmic matrix rather than deliberate mystical practice. Ancient energy workers recognized that certain combinations of planetary alignments, solar activity, and individual consciousness states could create windows of opportunity for interdimensional travel. The specific timing of his arrival in July 1954 may have coincided with cosmic conditions that temporarily weakened the barriers between closely aligned parallel realities. The quantum field indicates that his particular vibrational frequency must have been compatible with our dimensional resonance to allow for physical manifestation in our timeline. If his consciousness had originated from a radically different reality, such crossing would have been impossible or would have resulted in immediate dissolution of his physical form. The fact that he appeared completely solid and normal to customs officials suggests that the dimensional gap between his timeline and ours was relatively narrow, similar enough to allow for stable physical translation but different enough to create the geographical impossibilities that ultimately revealed his displacement. This points to the existence of what mystics call neighboring dimensions, parallel realities that share most fundamental characteristics while different in specific details. His possession of authentic-seeming documentation that maintained its coherence in our reality indicates that certain energetic patterns can maintain stability across dimensional boundaries. This suggests that consciousness itself may serve as a stabilizing field that allows objects and information to retain their integrity during interdimensional passage. The spontaneous nature of his crossing implies that such events may be more common than generally recognized, occurring as natural phenomena when specific energetic conditions align, rather than requiring advanced mystical knowledge or technological intervention. As we stand at the threshold between worlds, gazing into the infinite tapestry of parallel realities that dance just beyond our ordinary perception, the Taured Man's journey reminds us that consciousness itself is the ultimate passport to realms beyond imagination. His mysterious passage through the dimensional membrane serves as a cosmic invitation to expand our understanding of what is possible when we release our attachment to singular reality and embrace the magnificent multiplicity of existence itself. The ancient masters whispered that every moment contains doorways to countless worlds. Waiting for consciousness evolved enough to recognize and step through them. Perhaps the true mystery is not where the Taured Man went, but how many other travelers from parallel dimensions walk among us daily. They're impossible documents tucked safely in cosmic pockets. They're impossible stories waiting to awaken us to the infinite nature of the reality we call home. Continue your journey into the quantum mysteries that surround us. Dear seekers, for the universe holds countless secrets for those courageous enough to question the boundaries of the possible.